Hey there, how are you today? My name is Dana Damara, and you have landed on Astrocast. This is your new moon report for the new moon in Scorpio happening on November 13th at 1:27 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So, as we all know, new moons are all about new beginnings. So, we have 13 moons a year, 13 lunation cycles. And in that energy, when the moon is new, it's renewing itself. And we have a moment where we can reset the compass of our life. So I like to think of new moons as almost like a new year, right? So sometimes we'll wait till the end of the year or just before the beginning of a new year to make these New Year's resolutions. But the reality is that every time the moon is renewing itself and coming into this new phase, we have an opportunity to create a new path for ourselves. We have an opportunity to recommit to whatever it is that we're working on or trying to draw into our life or trying to release, whatever we have happening in that moment in time. And so new moons are important. Now, this new moon is in Scorpio. So, wherever the moon lands, whether it's the house of the zodiac sign, that's where the energy, generally speaking, is going to be the deepest. Okay. So, this is where the focus will be. So, when we talk about a new moon in Scorpio, we're talking about the energy of Scorpio. We're talking about the sense of deep understanding, intense emotions. Scorpio is a water symbol, so we're talking about an energy that can bring up emotions, that can bring up things that maybe have been hidden for a while. And remember, this is just generally speaking. Okay. The thing with the energy of the moon and all the planets, when we talk about astrology, is it really relates specifically to you based upon where this energy is hitting or co-mingling with your chart. So every time I do these recordings, it really amplifies, it talks about the generalization of where the moon is for everyone. But if you want to know exactly how to relate this to you in particular, you're going to want to have your chart read, or at least have a knowledge of what's going on in your chart. Okay. So, with that, what I want to do is I'm going to share on my screen what's going on for the new moon, and I'll point it all out. Those of you who've been listening, you know how this goes. And then I'm just going to talk a little bit about the different aspects, okay, and kind of what's happening and how it might uh, support you. Or I think a better way to explain it is not so much support you, but how to work with the energy, right? So we want to know how to work with this energy. Okay. So when we're talking about the new moon, okay, new moon is all about new beginnings. It's in 20 degrees, it's at 20 degrees in Scorpio, right? So 20 degrees Scorpio, if you look at this, is just down here. But you notice the big little conglomeration here of all these planets. So we have the moon and the sun, they're at the same degree. That's what makes it a new moon. And then opposite is this big guy over here. This is Uranus. And Uranus has been in Taurus for quite a while. And so it's making all this opposition, right? So Uranus is opposite this new moon, but we also have Mars sitting here. And I alluded a little bit in the weekly forecast about Mars opposite Uranus. And then we have Mercury over here, but Mercury's in Sag, it's sitting here, but we're going to really kind of focus on this over here. Okay, this is the new moon. So when we talk about the new moon sitting with Mars, the new moon sitting with Mars, Mars is the initiator, right? So Mars is the planet that wants us to kind of move forward with whatever it is that we want to do. Mars will create intensity. When the sun conjuncts Mars, this is about things coming at us quickly. This is about the energy wanting us to take initiative with what we really want. I'm actually going to stop share for a moment. There we go. And so Mars conjunct the sun, that means they're sitting right next to each other. This really wants us, the energy is asking us to move forward, right? To take that sense of initiative, but at the same time, be mindful, because if we move too fast or without compassion or understanding or even awareness, like, maybe our energy is a little bit uncontrolled, we could tend to act too quickly or be destructive in our ways of being, right? And then we're hurting other people. So I think the biggest thing when we have this type of fiery energy, just with the sun and the moon together and Mars sitting there with it, is to be mindful of our breath, right? And this is such a good reminder, anyways, but especially when Mars is sitting with the sun and the moon. And I also feel like this energy can lend itself to um, maybe unexpressed emotions coming out. So, I don't know how else to say this, but breath work is such a great way to kind of move through some energy that's sitting in the body without spewing it out harmfully. So be aware of how you're feeling. And if you're feeling angsty or frustrated, maybe step away for a little while until you can really use this energy to be constructive, because it is a constructive energy. I mean, you can get a lot done. You can be in a space of deep creativity and aligned with your purpose. And but if you're sitting in that space where there's stagnant stuff, where you haven't processed, say, for example, it could be counteractive. So physical activity, exercise, get out in nature, use this energy that's potentially giving you this like time to go, and use it constructively. The same thing with the moon. When the moon sits next to Mars, it just amplifies our emotions. So we may want to speak quicker than we need to. We might exaggerate how we're feeling, but at the same breath, think of it as both ways, right? Because there's always a different way. There's always an opposing way to interpret the energy. And it can also help you access these deeper emotions, right? And with Mercury sextiling Venus, Mercury is the communicator, Venus is what you value, Venus is love and money, and it's trining Uranus, so it's wanting you to be in a space, or being in a space of saying what you need, like speaking up for yourself, speaking your needs. Let me share my screen just for my own. Yeah, and I knew it right when I said it. It's not trining Uranus, it's trining Pluto. So it's trining Pluto just right over here, right? See that blue line? And so speaking on, here's Mercury down here. So when Mercury is sextiling Venus and Venus is trining Pluto, it creates this like energy of speak up for yourself, right? Like say what you mean, say how you feel, but don't let that Mars new moon energy exaggerate or push you into like an egoic way of speaking your mind, if that makes sense. And honestly, the fact that Uranus is opposite this new moon, that's an intense. I'm not even going to try to fake it. Like that is an intense, or sugar coated, I should say. It's a really intense transit. This is energy that wants us to break free from our old patterns. This is about inspiration. This is about fast moving energy, asking you to think outside the box. It could create Uranus's rapid transformation. So unexpected changes and events could come into your life that you didn't really think about. And what happens when unexpected events happen, or we're not, quote unquote, prepared? We react. That's where that Mars comes into play, right? So when Uranus is opposite the moon, the sun, and Mars, it's kind of intense, right? So rapidly changing circumstances, being prepared for conflict, for something outside of our realm of thinking that could come up. And that's challenging, because if we if we pull in the yogic perspective, right? Like yogic perspective is that we can't control anything. That's just a reminder, like the only thing we can control is our reaction, right? When I hear people say, well, I'm going to take this, I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to take this job or do this thing or be here because I want a sense of security. I understand that completely. Like I totally agree with that as a human. I think it's important to have these things set up in our life where we feel secure. But if we can remember that there really is no guarantee for security anywhere, nowhere in our life. Like anything can happen in a moment and just shift our whole life. And so the energy of Uranus opposite the sun, the moon, and Mars creates a sense of intensity that could bring about really quick change. And so I think the best thing that we can do this entire week, and especially as we move into this new moon energy, is to just be, I almost said be prepared. Be grounded in our life, like practicing, I mentioned it earlier, exercise, getting out into nature, practicing whatever practices we use, whether it's, breath work, yoga, meditation, surfing, being in nature, hiking, grounding, just getting into that sense of grounding, because the harder emotions of like anger and resentment and frustration can come up with this sort of transit, and you don't want to be impulsive. You don't want to be, WTFing everybody, right? But you also don't want to hide out and isolate and wait for the energy to pass, because this type of energy actually is good if we use it properly. It brings up things that we need to talk about, or we need to kind of clean up, or we need to deal with. And so all I'm going to say is, be open to being redirected in your energy, be open to things showing up in a way that maybe you didn't expect, and let go of expectation for real. And then I alluded to this in the weekly report, but I talked a little bit about Pluto this month with this new moon. And so Pluto, this little teeny tiny planet down here, is making so many aspects. It's sextiling Neptune. It's sextiling the new moon and Mars. It's making, again, that trine to Venus. It's making a trine to Uranus. And you notice that there's all those blue lines, right? So the blue lines really indicate, potentially harmonious activations, if you will, right? So with Pluto sextiling the moon, again, deep, intimate conversations are maybe up for grabs. You can see things from a way deeper perspective than you thought you could. And I want to say this before I forget, Pluto was retrograde for a while, and it was it's been in Capricorn since 2008, essentially. It moved forward into Aquarius, and then it moved back again. Okay. And so we've been playing for the last however many months with this like Pluto Capricorn, Pluto Aquarius, Pluto Capricorn. And so now as Pluto moves direct, it's moving toward Aquarius. So the whole way we see our world will shift. I mean, it takes, I think, 284 years for Pluto to go around the whole zodiac wheel. I mean, what is it, like 20 years in one sign or something? So the last 20 years, Pluto has been in Capricorn, which has been about, if you think about Capricorn, very earthy sign, taking one step at a time, structures, things like that. Now Pluto's moving into Aquarius, this very airy sign, this all about humanity, and this all about the energy of oneness, right? So that's going to shift everything on the planet. We're moving from a collective way of seeing things in a different way. And you can see that as like structures start to break down, or, ways that we've been doing things that are top down, that hierarchy way of doing things will shift. And Pluto sextiling the sun amplifies the different ways you can use your power. It can also amplify power struggles. So, again, this is all up to you as to how you want to interpret these Pluto transits. You have the power to choose. And I always try to remember that. I don't know if that was really ingrained in my generation, not because of my parents or anything, but I just think there's this certain energy of power that's coming up now in these newer ways of being, and younger generations of like, use your power and be empowered and really say how you feel. And I always try to remember to do that coming from the heart, right? So making sure that we are making empowered decisions as we step into conflict, as we step into inner transformation, as we step into shifting, right? Pluto helps us push through to get to our goals. Like, Pluto wants us to reach our goals in humanity and in our life and why we're here. Right. And then Neptune sextiling Pluto is really beautiful because Neptune is like the dreamer, right? So Neptune and sextiling Pluto is like, well, dream bigger. Why are you confining yourself to this like linear way of being? Think bigger, right? And as Pluto moves into Aquarius, we will witness these ways where we see the shifts. Like, it will not be subtle. It won't be subtle if you're awake in any way, shape, or form to your existence in humanity and consciousness and human evolution, all the words, the shifting of paradigms. You're going to feel this movement, and it will kick off with this new moon in Scorpio, because remember, Scorpio is deep. Scorpio is like, we want to get to the depth of things, right? So this new moon, I'm just looking at my notes really quick. Yeah, this is a real massive awakening on the planet, and potentially within you. It could create, I don't know how else to explain it, like storm clouds, right? Like, it could create an implosion or something that's uncomfortable. But my invitation to you is to remember to focus on that inner peace, that inner wisdom, that inner compassion, the empowerment of your choice. Like, you have a choice. How do I want to use this energy? How do I want to use the things that happen for me in my life? Not to me, not to you, but for you. How do you want to use the energy that's happening for you? Really important new moon. So I always say with new moons, the 2 days leading up to the new moon and the 2 days after are usually quite potent. So, use this energy that's best for you. Allow yourself to take some time to dream, to journal, to be quiet, to sit in the in the solitude when you can. And if you can't, then practice breath for sure. If you want your chart read, again, I am available Monday through Friday, and you can make appointments on my website at danademara.com. If you want more information just about astrology in general and want to know when I'm offering up my Astrology 101 course in 2024, please go to myastrocast.com, put in your little email there, and you get all the information. I want to say thank you so much. Always such a pleasure, and I hope you have a beautiful day. Namaste.